Hi, um, this is my first reaction video. Today we're gonna be reacting to Alex Bale's Blues Clues and apparently Law and Order theory. I don't know anything about these two shows. The only thing I know about Blues Clues is like maybe the new one. I watch like minutes of the new show's episodes, but I really don't know anything. And with the original, I think the new host's name was like John or Josh or something. Um, I'm gonna make a part two of this because this theory video is 27 minutes long, and since I'm not verified yet, I'm gonna need to. I can't make a video that like is longer than 15 minutes, so I'm gonna make maybe a part 2 of this, and without further ado, let's begin.
Hi there!
Come on
Blue's
in.
Clues is an educational children's TV show about a man named Steve who lives in a magical world where he spends his day talking to inanimate objects, jumping through picture frames, and trying to find clues to help understand his magical blue dog. Law & Order is a gritty, realistic police procedural / legal drama that involves New York City homicide detectives trying to solve murders and prosecute criminals. These two
Is Law and Order still like going on? Like it's a very long running show. I think it has like 24 seasons. My god.
shows are very different. You could not find two shows more polar opposite than Blue's Clues and Law and Order. And yet, despite this, not only do I believe that these two shows exist in the same universe, but I'm
What?
also going to be proving that the entire Blue's Clues show is actually just a fantasy inside of the mind of a single Law and Order side character. Yes, I am being serious. I know that sounds crazy, but just stick with me. Because I'm pretty sure that I have discovered a 29-year-old secret that has never been talked about before today. Get ready, because this is the Blue's Clues Law and Order theory.
Okay, before we get started, I'm just gonna fix the quality. Hold on. There we go. I think I fixed it. Maybe. I don't know. I really like his intros. The three hosts.
By far, the most common type of fan theory is the dream theory. The idea that everything happening in a story is actually all just inside of a character's head, whether they're stuck in a coma, or they're dreaming, or hallucinating, or they're actually dead. Pretty much every piece of media has some kind of dream theory. And it's sort of the lazy, low-hanging fruit of fan theories. You can just apply it to literally anything, and usually there's never actually any evidence besides, "Whoa, this show is so crazy and unrealistic, that must mean it's a dream!" And surprisingly, the show that seems to have the most of these types of fan theories is Blue's Clues. You got Steve is actually schizophrenic, Steve is actually in a mental asylum, Steve is actually a drug addict, Steve is actually in prison, Steve is actually a murderer who killed his parents, oh my god. Even I made a parody of these theories back in 2017.
So yeah, it's a pretty basic, normal kid show. Steve, a 30-year-old schizophrenic who killed his parents, pretends to be a kid.
You know, that was before I dedicated my life to making fan theories about kid shows. And look, I understand the appeal of these types of theories. It's fun to take something innocent from your childhood and give it a dark, edgy plot twist. That's kind of literally my job right now. But why are there so many of these theories about specifically Blue's Clues? Well, I think it's because everything about this show has always felt fake. Steve is the only real person in this world. He looks like a young adult, but he acts like a child. And he lives alone in a house where he spends his day jumping into picture frames or talking to unseen voices or inanimate objects. It just kind of sounds like I'm describing someone who is experiencing some kind of false reality. Even the way
I mean, I think the reason why, kids before, like, they're adults now, but back when they were kids and they were watching this, they were just thinking that this was some kind of magical, unique world. I mean, that's always what I have felt when I've watched, like, an unrealistic cartoon. Maybe that's just me, I don't know.
Steve moves around is strange. He never actually leaves the room, he just kind of pretends to walk in place while this fantasy world moves around him.
Come on.
Obviously that was more
He doesn't move around the room. The room moves around him.
of a filming limitation, but it still adds to this feeling of fakeness. But other than these surface level weird vibes the show gives off, there's never actually been any strong evidence to prove one of these theories. And believe me, I and others have looked. It has been 28 years since this show first came out. You know, you'd think if there was actually some kind of smoking gun here, we would have found it by now. But what if that's because we've all been looking in the wrong place? So, the other day, I stumbled upon an interesting piece of Blue's Clues trivia. A year after Steve Burns filmed the Blue's Clues pilot, he had a small role in an episode of Law and Order. And I thought the idea of seeing Steve from Blue's Clues in a gritty, realistic cop show was kind of funny, so I decided to track down the 1995 episode titled Cruel and Unusual. Just a heads up, this episode deals with some pretty serious subject matter, so please proceed with caution.
I will.
Episode, Steve Burns plays a
we're back,
kid
we're
with
back.
autism named Kevin Jeffries.
Good morning, how are you?
Great.
What time is it?
10:15.
No, it's 10:18.
We learn that Kevin has trouble communicating with others and often harms himself.
that's-
So his parents
like
send
a
him to live in a children's behavioral clinic.
That's a good
Just what was the behavioral clinic doing for him?
When Kevin was 10, he started to hurt himself.
We didn't know what to do. We couldn't keep Kevin here. We had to send him away.
We later find out that the doctors at this clinic were horribly mistreating him by giving him intense electroshock therapy and forcing him to wear a
that's bad.
sensory deprivation helmet for days.
He kept Kathy in this helmet for 3 straight days. This helmet cut off the blood supply to our daughter's brain.
The episode starts with Kevin
Really?
after he's
Yeah.
escaped from the facility, but tragically he gets arrested and later succumbs to the injuries sustained from his abuse and dies.
I don't know, Mike. I think the kid's dead.
And the rest of the episode
Sad.
follows the detectives investigating his death. So yeah, this is a very sad and serious episode, and it deals with some real systemic issues that are still a problem today. And like I was saying, this show is clearly very, very different than Blue's Clues. But what I find interesting about this is that for years, people have been trying to prove that Steve is actually in prison or a mental facility, and now we have this piece of media where we see Steve's actor in that exact position, and as far as I'm aware, no one's ever really talked about this. I mean, sure, Kevin's not schizophrenic, he has autism, but seeing as how he was being abused and put into sensory deprivation for days where he couldn't hear or see anything, you can kind of imagine that anyone in that position might try to
Yeah.
escape to some kind of fantasy
Yeah.
inside of their head. So yeah, I thought this was an interesting coincidence, but at the end of the day, that's kinda all it was. Like, obviously, just because the same actor shows up in 2 different shows doesn't mean they're actually connected. But then, I took a closer look at this episode, and I started to notice more and more weird similarities between Kevin and Steve. At first, it just started with some little things. We are told by Kevin's parents that he was learning to draw.
Thanks to him, Kevin was learning to draw.
And in every episode of Blue's Clues, Steve draws in his handy-dandy notebook.
Our handy-dandy? Notebook. Let's draw a rectangle, and there, cheese.
Okay, but so what? Lots of kids like to draw. But we are also told that when Kevin harmed himself, he was strapped to a chair.
We put them in a chair, and then we hold them there using soft cuffs.
And in every episode of Blue's Clues, Steve spends a lot of time in his thinking chair.
We're ready to sit in our
Thinking chair.
Now that we're in our thinking chair, let's think.
And then, when Kevin escaped the facility, he kept asking people what time it was.
What time is it?
10:15.
What time?
How you doing today, huh?
What time?
Now, it is common for some people with autism to rely on specific schedules or routines, but what time it is also really important in Blue's Clues.
What time is it?
What time is it now?
Steve has a cleanup time,
We just had cleanup time.
a nap time.
It's Blue's nap time.
Now it's time for so long. There's a talking clock. And most of all, every day, Steve has mail time.
Hey, Blue, the mail's here.
So yeah, there's some weird similarities here, but nothing actually concrete. I didn't really start to take any of this seriously until I realized. After Kevin escaped, we are told that he went to a movie theater. And guess what he did in the theater?
Movie started at 10. He was out of here by 10 after 10. Got out of his seat, walked into the screen.
Kevin got out of his seat and tried to walk into the screen. Doesn't that sound exactly like Steve Bluska doing into a picture?
Oh my god.
We can too.
Get out of his seat.
Wait. Do people with autism like normally walk into the screen of a movie theater? Is that true? What?
Walked into the screen.
This kind of feels like more than a coincidence. So this is when I first started to consider, is it really possible that Kevin Jeffries from Law & Order is the real Steve and Blue's Clues is all a fantasy he created to escape his abusive reality? Okay, I know you're not convinced yet, and to be honest, neither was I, but don't worry, we are just getting started. Kevin's behavioral clinic is in New York City, and the one-time characters actually leave the Blue's Clues fantasy world and go to the real world, they end up in New York.
Blue's Clues in New York City? This is epic!
Also, in the very first episode of Blue's Clues, we can see a newspaper from the New York Times inside of Steve's house, strongly implying that's actually where he lives. We can also see objects from Blue's Clues in Kevin's life. In Kevin's parents' house, we see a very large salt and pepper shaker, just like Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper.
Hi, Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper.
Hello, Steve. Hello, Steve.
And in the clinic, we can see a red bucket, just like Steve's friend, Bale.
Hello, Bale.
Hi, Steve.
Also, when Steve left the show to go to college, he left on a blue bus.
Bye.
And when Kevin escaped the clinic, in his pocket, he had a schedule for the Greyhound.
Here you go.
Amtrak schedule, Greyhound schedules.
Which is also a blue bus.
What?
Alright, those are some more interesting connections, but you're probably still not completely sold yet, right?
A little bit.
Well, check this out. When Steve eventually left the show to go to college, he was replaced by his younger brother Joe.
Oh, hi. It's me, Steve's brother Joe.
And later, Joe got replaced by their cousin Josh.
Hi, it's me, Josh.
And not only does Kevin also have a younger brother, but at the clinic, there is a nurse named Joe.
What's your name?
Joe Garvey.
Joe Garvey, you're under arrest for assault.
And an occupational therapist named Josh.
Take a look at the amended complaint. An occupational therapist, Josh Bingham, was dropped.
I think that Kevin is taking aspects from his real life, like the objects or the names of the people working at the clinic, and applying them to his fantasy. Also, this one is less impressive, but the name Kevin is also the name of the Blue's Clues UK host.
Hello out there.
That's a
It's me,
UK
Kevin.
Also, check this out. Kevin's behavioral clinic has the same initials as Blue's Clues. Huh? That one's also not that impressive, I know.
Yeah.
But wait. If this...
Yeah, I'm gonna end it right here. Gonna make a part 2 of this right now. Since I'm gonna be posting all of these at the exact same time, that's about it. See you in the next one.